So first up here, we're actually going to start with one of the finals games because the loser ends up going down to play somebody else for their shot again at trying to get another spot. So this is actually Shikkamarus versus Humble Opinion. Humble Opinion having gone undefeated up until this point, and if Humble Opinion wins this game, they get their spot for the Invitational, and they have not lost a single match the entire tournament. So it'd be really cool to see if Humble Opinion's able to pick up this win here versus Shikkamarus. So without further ado, this is your first qualifier match to see who qualifies for the Invitational next week. Humble Opinion versus Shikkamarus. And Reinu is now playing Rogio, and it looks like we are about to get into game one, so let's head on over for everybody.
Oh boy, let's see what they're getting into. I wonder if it's going to be a mirror match. It's not a mirror match. We dodged the mirror, so Shen Fiora versus Pirate Aggro.
Nice, nice. Like to see it. So we'll see Pirate Aggro once again. Seems to be the premier aggro deck in the metagame currently, and very curious to see how Fiora Shen does here.
So we've seen the Pirate Aggro players. Initially, the spell lineup, I believe it was like Warning Shots, Make It Rain, and Noxian Fervors, and now we're moving away from the Warning Shot and into Decimates. So the players just deciding that they do need a little bit more top end than they previously had.
A little bit more oomph. So
yeah,
see if that's going to be the difference maker here with Humble Opinion. And I feel like, I mean, with Shikkamarus, as far as the lower cost stuff, we got the 3 Green Lake Caretakers, 3 Bright Steel, 3 River Shaper, 3 Fleet Feather, and, obviously plenty of removal and things like the 3 Concerted Strike and 3 Single Combat. So, Shikkamarus might be able to deal with most of the board that Humble Opinion drops. So I think Humble's really going to have to focus on getting something like Jack the Winner online, getting some of those burn spells online to really push through the damage, because I think it's going to be hard for Humble to really push through damage just through combat alone.
and I do want to note that Shikkamarus is playing a couple copies of Spirit's Refuge, so is going to have a fair amount of lifesteal available to him. It kind of depends on how big a unit he can get that down on. If he can get it on something like a Scout, it's going to be a big life point swing. But the barriers, it's kind of weird because the barriers don't come out as often on defense as they do on offense for the Shen Fiora deck, which actually works out pretty well because barriers are pretty ineffective on defense against a Misfortune deck.
Yeah, and already doing a solid 4 damage going into turn 3 here, so not bad for Humble. We'll see if he opts to go with I imagine the Petty Officer or the Misfortune here. You could. The Misfortune is going to trade pretty evenly with the Fiora. If he does get it dropped down, it's just going to go ahead and get challenged. So the Petty Officer does seem to be a little bit smarter of a decision here. Gets the Mage Seeker. So it'd be interesting to see what we get out of that. That spices up this game a little bit.
That Mage Seeker Conservator has probably swung more games than any other randomly generated card we've ever seen. The amount of ruinations that have come out of this card is insane, especially like it happens a lot in we've seen a couple of deep decks that like randomly got this off a treasure trove and then it gave them a ruination after their ruination had been tossed, so the opponent wasn't playing around it anymore. It can get a little bit wild, but one thing I do want to note, because we do see that 1 Spellman on the side of Shikkamarus, no Rangers Resolve in this deck, as I believe is pretty standard for the Shen Fiora, as you've got all these barriers. Yeah, there's no Rangers Resolve in Humble Opinion's list either.
Yeah, and that's another thing to note too. I mentioned it'll be hard for Humble to get through any real damage with combat, but you got to remember, so Shikkamarus has Fiora, and this Fiora already with 1 kill might just be able to go ahead and win the game before the aggro deck can do anything, getting the 4 kills off and winning with that alternate win condition. So be curious to see if we see some single combats and barriers start to hit down. And wow, curving Fiora into Shen too is going to be rough for Humble.
It's not out of the question that we get this Shen online pretty quickly. And I mean, if you can get Spirit's Refuge out with the Shen leveled on the board, then all of a sudden that lifesteal is making a much larger impact. You're getting that extra 3 attack boost, gaining your life a little bit more. And I mean, these are not phenomenal attacks out of Humble Opinion. I almost like the idea of playing the Misfortune just so that you can push a little bit more damage. The Fiora will no longer be able to block anything. Of course, you are just going to lose that next turn, as, I mean, Shadow Flare feels so bad when you're staring down 2 champions, because for those of you that don't know, this card doesn't affect champions.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't affect champions. I remember when I thought that card was good when it first came out. Kind of like how I thought Purify was a lot better than it was, and it wasn't. So, damn.
Every time I want to put Whimsy in a deck, I just end up looking at a Trundle, and I'm like, oh, man.
So, lots of damage, though, coming out on the side of Humble. So, it's going to put Shikkamarus decently low. But again, going to have to worry about this Fiora win con here in a second. And I imagine with Shikka taking that damage and actually prioritizing saving this Fiora, you got to think there's already a Spirit's Refuge in Shikka's hand right now.
We don't see... Oh, I was going to say we don't see any interaction out of Humble Opinion, but if Shikka goes for some kind of development before the attack, Humble Opinion could find a Make It Rain off the Zap Sprayfin, and popping the barrier from the Fiora could be all that they need. And we're actually going to see Shikka respect the potential of a Make It Rain here and still go for the one attack unit, even though the Fiora is going to have barrier.
Yeah, and this is looking pretty good for Shikka. Going to be able to level up the Fiora. Going to go up to 3 health as well. Still within range of getting killed by something like Noxian Fervor. Okay, I do like. I was gonna say
we're getting risky.
Yeah,
we're getting risky.
This is gonna be interesting. We'll see if this barrier gets popped. Maybe he has a read. I mean, we know that Humble obviously has no way of getting rid of this barrier here. So this is actually a really good read by Shikka if that's the case.
I don't know that you could even make a read like that. You haven't really been in a situation where a Make It Rain would have been good. And since, there's no Spellman on the side of Humble Opinion, it means he's been playing on curve for the entirety of the game thus far. So there's really no way to know if your opponent's going to have a Make It Rain or not. But Shikka says, you know what? It's game number 1. Let's risk it all.
Yeah, and I like it. I like getting a little bit risque here. Sometimes it pays off. And it is a card game, This is very heavily RNG based. You got to take some risks here and there. So I do like this. We'll trade the Petty Officer with the Shen, which feels a little bad. So maybe we see the Spirit's Refuge come down. Like I thought, I feel like there's a Spirit's Refuge in Shikka's hand. We'll see if that's the case. We could also see some other sort of barrier effect come down to save the Shen, as I do think Shikka is possibly going to want to keep the Shen, but we'll see what he decides to do.
I don't know if this is enough of a life swing for you to want to use something like the Spirit's Refuge. Yeah. If you're hanging on to a Genevieve, or I don't think he plays Grizzled Ranger, actually. I think you're really just kind of holding it for a Genevieve, which we do have confirmation that he plays her. Even a Swiftwing Lancer, you need to get as much health out of that as possible, especially given that your opponent is hanging on to this Crackshot Corsair. That's a little bit of damage that you can't do anything of. Well, I say that you can't do anything about, but he does actually play Deny, and you could theoretically deny the Crackshot Corsair ability, but it is instead going to be Riposte to save the Shen. Yep. Fiora's Riposte specifically, so now we're kind of all in on the one Fiora that we do have, and I think that, Shikka kind of understands that he's not dropping Humble Opinion to 0 this game. It's going to have to be the Fiora, and he's actually got a pretty good shot at doing it, given the way that the board has lined up thus far, assuming that he can survive this Jack the Winner.
So, then that was kind of my whole thing with possibly playing the Spirit's Refuge on Shen. Sure, you're only getting 3 worth of heal off of that, which feels kind of bad, but I don't know. He might have needed that. He is already at 7, which is pretty low for turn 5. It's going to be close.
Single combat to kill the Jack the Winner?
Oh, that would be incredible. That's actually really good for Shikka, especially utilizing basically Riposte twice there. That's incredible value for him.
It's hard because you probably want to use this single combat on the Fiora to win the game a little bit later on. But, Jack is extremely threatening with the life total that you find yourself at, and you're probably just going to have to block it with the Shen next turn anyway. I think that single combat is literally the only spell that he could have hovered there that is the case. So we do know he has single combat, and just... if this Jack ends up being the difference maker, and it could be, as we see Crackshot Corsair, Sleep with the Fishes, and Decimate is lethal damage this turn.
And that's exactly what I was worried about, which is why I would have liked to see some sort of life gain there from Shikkamarus. And, that's something we haven't really touched on, right? He hovered that single combat. I wonder how aware people are that if you only have a certain amount of spells in your deck that can only be used in certain situations, if you hover something like that, you give away, essentially, what is in your hand.
So if Shikka has Riposte single combat and Humble Opinion tries to do anything, Shikka wins this turn. If you go for the attack with Jack, I Riposte, I block it, I single combat onto your Corsair. You attack with the Corsair, I block it, then I Riposte single combat onto the Jack. Humble Opinion now has the Make It Rain, which is what he went for on the Zap Sprayfin. I think sort of understanding that riposte single combat is going to be Fiora lethal here and needed some kind of way to pop the barrier.
We'll see if this elusive damage gets through, which is a pretty big deal. This does need to get dealt with, so it feels kind of bad that Shikka might have to use some sort of removal like single combat, like Concerted Strike. If it is single combat with something like the Fiora, that does open up the Fiora to getting killed with a Make It Rain that we see in Humble's hand here. So it's definitely a risky play if that's the case. And Crackshot Corsair, baby, the card newly buffed, coming into play here. I mean, what is this, the third proc of it now?
Yeah, it's been doing a lot of work so far. And I believe this is actually main decked from Humble Opinion.
It is. There's 3 of them.
Yeah, 3.
So very happy to see that this card buffed is now being played. And here it is. Here is the Spirit's Refuge and the single combat going to come out. And I figured that Spirit's Refuge was in there. I guess it makes a little bit more sense to now we're getting 4 out of it instead of the 3 on the Shen. So I do like this. This is going to do a lot. This essentially is not just a heal for 4, but also prevents the 2 damage from the Zap Sprayfin and some progress towards this Fiora win con.
I think you need to save this Make It Rain for next turn. And what you need to do on the side of Humble is you need to sleep with the fishies, your Crackshot Corsair. He's done his work, but it's time to sink him to the bottom of the ocean before Fiora can get her greedy little hands on him.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna use this Make It Rain. I'm not crazy about using it here.
So my problem with the Make It Rain is that if Fiora is going to kill Jack the Winner, she needs a riposte anyway. So the barrier that you're getting out of the Shen doesn't matter. Putting her at 1 HP doesn't matter if you're not going for another Make It Rain in hand. And now you have to kill your own. I mean, maybe Humble Opinion doesn't understand that he needs to kill his own Crackshot Corsair and is trying to set up Fiora so that she can't get a kill onto him. And that's why we took the Shen out. It looks like we are going to figure this out. It's going to be the sleep with the fishies onto the little pirate boy who's now going to slumber at the bottom of the ocean in order to deal 2 damage to Shikkamarus next.
Are we just settling on sleep with the fishies? Is that
yes,
we're just totally gonna go all in on sleep with the fishies? Okay. So we have the misfortune drawn now here as well, and wow, okay.
Is this just the riposte? I mean, Humble has no response for this.
Yeah, there's just nothing. Yeah, this is just all right. So Shikka just wins. And the second I saw Fiora hit turn 3 followed by Shen, I knew it. That's so rough. And throwing out the Shadow Flare for some extra spice style points. Shikka gonna take it there with this repost. Nothing Humble can do about it. And that's gonna be game 1 going over to Shikka with this Fiora Shen deck. And again, barrier decks. Woo! Been a long day. Barrier decks coming in clutch in this tournament. We've seen so many of them perform incredibly well today and yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. And what I am curious to see is, since both of these players brought the same regional compositions, if there was a difference in the ban strategy. Their last decks were different. One is Nightfall Aggro, one is the Kid Cudi Day and Night deck, as we've been calling it for those of you that are just joining us, because most of you haven't been with us the whole day, so I understand if you've missed some of these inside jokes we've been building up to.
Kid Cudi. And if you don't know who Kid Cudi is and you've never heard that song, please, for the love of God, go listen to it. It's not bad.
But not right now.
Yeah, not right now.
It's really important.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is, did they ban different decks, or are we going to get a Pirate Aggro Mirror here?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting if it's a Pirate Aggro Mirror. Like you had mentioned earlier, it alluded to, this might be a pretty quick matchup, being that there's a lot of aggro decks being played. I'd like to see the Nightfall. Okay. It looks like Pirate Aggro.
So it's going to be the day and night. Because I did want to say, Shikamaru's Pirate Aggro is a lot different than Humble Opinions. We see things like Double Up in the main. We see Transfusion, a return to that card, something we haven't seen in a long, long time.
Wait, who's playing Double Up?
Shikka.
Shikka had Double Up in that deck?
He's got Double Up in his Pirate Aggro.
Shikka had Double Up in his Pirate Aggro. What is this world coming to?
And the best part about that is that Humble Opinion, your 9-0 Swiss player who is still undefeated, saw that Double Up and said, nope, not for me. Ban that.
I mean, wow. And actually not opting for the Crackshot Corsair either. So that's definitely interesting. The 2 different takes on the deck between Humble Opinion and Shikka. And yeah, as you mentioned, something to keep note of, everybody. You are watching a match right now where Humble Opinion has yet to lose a best of 3 throughout this tournament. And
I thought you were going to say best of 5, and I'm like, yeah, he hasn't lost any of those.
yeah,
either.
no, technically, or best of 7s or 9s, you know. So
Go all day with this.
Shikkamarus up 1-0. So Humble Opinion has a hell of a path to get back to winning this match and getting a spot in the Invitational next weekend.
So we had talked about the sort of lack of win conditions in this night and day deck out of Shikkamarus. We know that Len was playing it a little bit earlier. We had followed his journey a little bit throughout day 1 and towards the end of day 2. No star shaping coming out of Shikka's list. So one more sort of win condition taken off the table in that large Celestial Invoker. In fact, Hush, Unspeakable Horror, and Pale Cascade are the only spells in this deck. This is extremely unit-centric, and there is no healing.
Yeah, absolutely no healing. We have Hush.
Well, I mean, Unspeakable Horror, but I don't really count that.
Yeah, Unspeakable Horror is not really going to get the job done against an aggro deck as far as healing is concerned. I mean, early on, I will say Unspeakable Horror to get rid of something like Legion Saboteur could be pretty impactful here. So we'll see if that's something that we see pretty soon. And getting this Diana down early. So Shikka trying to just be as aggressive as possible here. This is interesting. We'll see how this works out for Shikka against this Pirate aggro matchup.
Pretty slow start on the side of Humble Opinion. Missing turn 2. I mean, I think it's really only Legion Grenadier that you play on turn 2. Your other one is the Imperial Demolitionist, which Imperial Demolitionist always looked a little bit weird to me in a deck like this. I am going to say I really like Humble Opinion's list, taking advantage of the Crackshot Corsair just got buffed to a 1/2, so now will actually survive a Demolitionist hit, and that does make me like it a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, because you see Legion Saboteur, and you're like, why would you play Legion Saboteur into Imperial Demolitionist? Like, this doesn't make sense. But Crackshot Corsair kind of fills that gap nicely, and obviously Jagged Butcher's okay for that as well. Wow, okay, Bark Beast from Humble Opinion. Wow.
Definitely one of the better one-drops that you can have pop out of that, and I mean, I feel like for how many petty officers we've seen over the course of the day, we probably should have been tracking the kind of one drops that come out of it, just to see, you know, if it's leaning towards any other than that stupid thing that we saw you Beetlejuiced out here.
Jesus.
Name
Star Child?
Star Seer, the 0/3.
Seer? No, that's Yu-Gi-Oh.
The Soraka card that came out before Soraka, she was like, they were all running a race. Oh, who's going to get announced first? And this one kind of tripped and fell down the mountain and stumbled into a different region of Targon, and they just kind of shoved it out into the set. And Soraka's not here yet. That little kid's looking for a home.
All right. Well, we see Solari coming down here to invoke a Celestial. Very curious to see what Shikkamarus got and whether or not that's going to be impactful here in the next couple of turns. Diana just going to be let through, not going to block it with either the Petty Officer or the Bark Beast. And we'll see if Humble Opinion decides to start to develop a little bit more here. Really just has the option to play one unit, which feels bad. We're going to want to go with the 3-cost unit most likely so that we are mana efficient here, which means Legion Grenadiers likely not coming down this turn. Misfortune, okay.
So I want to say that Humble should have an advantage here because he's got a lot of burn in the deck. You know, we have Jack the Winner, we have Decimates in the main, there's Captain Farron in here. And as we had mentioned, no healing on the side of Shikka, so he is actually pretty vulnerable to the burn strategy. Shiku's playing pretty board-centric, but outside of the daylight effects, a lot of your units are actually relatively weak. I think what Shikka's going to go for here is a big OTK turn with Leona, Ravoon, and Morning Light. Excuse me, stunning out most of Humble Opinion's board and just going over the top. So getting in this chip damage in the meantime is really good for him. And this Leona is super impactful. Coming down, this is one of the healthiest units in the deck, going to be an extremely effective blocker, but also going to turn on that Bark Beast most likely.
Yeah, and we'll see what Humble's going to do with this open attack. Well, if he decides to open attack or if we're going to see some development. I imagine in this particular spot we're going to see some development. This Leona absolutely stalwarts this entire kind of aggression from Humble Opinion. He has to rely more on burn damage and whatnot, and I think that's why we're seeing the Gangplank come out here to basically challenge this Leona and say, all right, I am bigger than you. I will be able to get some work done on this board and hopefully start to pick away at what Shikkamarus has started to develop here on the field.
The Gangplank is huge in conjunction with the Misfortune ability. You know, all of a sudden, your Diana can't block, your Solari Priestess can't. I mean, it can block, but it won't get anything done. And Leona is just going to die if it tries to block either a Petty Officer or a Misfortune. What do we have? I'm contemplating, is there a universe where this is like a Leona's Morning Light to trigger the stun on the Leona? That would be absolutely buck wild.
Wow, okay. That would be pretty insane. It would stun out the gangplank and kind of prevent any aggression Humble's trying to go for here. So we'll see if that happens. It is only Leona's Morning Light, right? Because we aren't seeing it main decked on the side of Shikka.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the only spells in the deck are
Yeah,
Pale Cascade, Hush,
yeah.
and Unspeakable Horror. So if he's hovering a spell, it's either a Leona's Morning Light or it's an Unspeakable Horror.
Yeah, and here we go. Here's the full-on attack here. Gonna get the keg active on the Misfortune attack, which is pretty big. So having not Pale Cascade, Unspeakable Horror would be absolutely great here. Like that would be what you want to kind of prevent this Misfortune effect from really just completely destroying your field, because Diana and the Solari Priestess are both going to die here, as well as this Leona is going to trade with the Misfortune. So I can't imagine Shikka lining up these blocks unless we have the Unspeakable Horror in hand.
I'm a little confused about this Solari Priestess block. Is this not just going to die to the kegged up MF ability and then get
over
all of the Gangplank damage pushed through anyway?
Yeah, and I think okay, here we go.
Okay, Hush onto the keg. Now I get to see this in here.
Not quite Unspeakable Horror, but still gets the job done. Yeah. So we will see the Misfortune effect go off. Not really get too much done. Just getting the one face damage, really. And Bark Beast getting up to 3-3.
So what confuses me a little bit is the damage pushed onto the Gangplank, I don't think actually represents anything here. I mean, there's no removal in this deck, as we had mentioned. Maybe we're just trying to set it up so that a Leona attack or a Leona block will eventually kill it, but you would have saved more damage by blocking the Bark Beast.
Yeah, actually, yeah, because the 3 damage. I agree. I wonder if Shikka had done that for a specific reason. We'll see, I guess. But for now, we have the Spacey Sketcher coming down. We'll see. We haven't seen the original Celestial come down, have we?
No, we have not.
Okay.
The 4, 5, or 6 card. Oh, maybe it was. That's a good call. Maybe it was a setup for the Meteor Shower.
Yeah, so Meteor Shower might be what Shikka is looking to do here. And actually, I gotta give Shikka props for props are due. Using that fleeting copy of Hush for the Spacey Sketcher just feels good. Like you feel like you accomplished something when you did that. It's a nice little card advantage trick. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, so Serpent was gotten off of. Oh, and that's actually really cool because it means that now the Meteor Shower kills the Gangplank and the Bark Beast. So Shikamaru is scaring me a little bit because it feels like that block onto the Gangplank means we're playing more for board. And this is, of course, all under the assumption that he has a Meteor Shower. If something else was gotten, this Gangplank block is wild.
Yeah, no, I got to agree. But we're seeing, too, on the side of Humble, like, there's a lot of burn. So Humble might still be able to just close this out with things like Jack the Winner and Decimate. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we're able to get some stuns off on the side of Shikka and just go in for a big attack here.
Humble might fire off the Decimate just to get the most damage out of it possible while the keg is still on field, and then throw down a little bit of his burn, the turn after. Humble definitely has 9 damage in hand. It's just a matter of, is he going to actually be able to get it all down in a timely fashion?
Yeah, I think possibly thinking about playing the Petty Officer first. I don't know about that because you don't want your opponent to be able to challenge the keg, and actually not going to play the Decimate, which means Shikka would be able to go ahead and challenge this vulnerable keg here and just possibly prevent a little bit of damage because there's nothing that Humble can chain to that challenge. We'll see if that is the case. The Spacey Sketcher can take care of that. And like you mentioned, this Serpent can go ahead and take care of the Bark Beast if there is something like Meteor Shower in hand. It's going to be super good for Shikamaru. I'm really curious to see what the other Celestial is.
I feel like it's got to be Meteor Shower, right?
Yeah.
Shikka didn't get this far by putzing around.
Yeah, I hope it's Meteor Shower. So, is this it? Yep.
And maybe, we saw that he was hovering.
Oh,
his
it has to be.
combat. Maybe it was the Meteor.
Hey!
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
We're smart. We know what we're talking about. Look at that.
Sometimes.
So, yeah, like, that was the first time today.
Look, all I'm saying is if we had spectator mode, we would have known it was there from the get-go. Someone from Riot, I know you're listening. It's got to be someone from Riot. I don't care what your position is. I do care what your position is. I do care about you. And it's not like I want you to walk into a department you don't work in and be like, hey, what are you guys doing here?
We care about you as a person. It's fine. So, yeah, that Gangplank. It all comes together now. Gangplank block makes sense. Meteor Shower coming out. And we are also going to see the... oh, God. I just blanked on her name. The crack shot Corsair. Still getting used to that.
Don't worry. I remember we made a big deal about her in one of the casts because she like popped off of a petty officer and neither of us could remember her name. And I think Mobilytics crashed when we tried to look it up.
It just wasn't meant to be. And this is good. Seeing again a card that was recently buffed just being played in a highly competitive event here is pretty cool. So we'll see what Humble decides to do. I imagine we develop here and eventually go into a Sleep with the Fishes.
I mean, Humble could have lethal here if you want to. I mean, the Sleep with the Fishes, a Keg, a Decimate, and a Crackshot Corsair attack. That's 9 damage.
Yeah, I mean, lethal is upon us here for Humble. It's just about whether or not he puts it together correctly and if Shikka has any answers. And again, just knowing what Shikka's playing, we have Unspeakable Horror, sure, so maybe you have to prepare to do 10 damage. And, okay. We see the Leona's Morning Light come out, and this is going to... I don't know how impactful this is really going to be on an off turn.
Honestly, the answer is not very.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like a very defensive play. You're at 9 life. If Humble Opinion just goes in with all 3 of his units, Shikka's in a really rough spot. Doesn't have effective blockers. Is going to lose his units for nothing, as you do have to block that Jack the Winner. But falling down to 3 HP, I think Humble Opinion is going to be pretty inclined to go for game here. You really only have to attack with this Crackshot Corsair. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the 7 damage done, as the Crackshot effect and the MF effect. Opponent's down to 2. Or your opponent's down to 7. That's just Sleep with the Fishes, Decimate.
Yeah, and also the Legion Grenadier going to come down too, so could even deal the additional damage of Legion Grenadier. Plenty of damage on board. Plenty of damage. So, again, going to see how Humble decides to kind of order this. What's going to happen. Oh, yeah, plus, 2 damage with Misfortune and Crackshot. Those add up, man. I mean, I'm loving this Crackshot Corsair now. Putting in work in both of these games.
There are so many minuscule buffs that go through the patch notes, and I look at them and I'm like, what is this? Why are we doing this? And then all of a sudden 3 days later we're in what is effectively the finals of a major qualifier, and Humble Opinion has said, I know what this is for me. Actually, I get to put this in my pirate aggro because I've been struggling to find good targets for my Imperial Demolitionist ever since Disciple, RIP, rest her soul, was gutted back in patch 1.6.
What is that card?
Exactly. I feel like for so long we were just the amount of times that we had to talk about transfusion math and how bad the potential blocks on the Crimson Disciple were, and now we're so far removed from that we have forgotten her name.
Yep, no, and then also rip Vladimir for that as well, so it feels bad, man. But here's the Sleep with the Fishes, gonna deal 2 damage, and we still have Decimate as well as Grenadier in hand. Can't do anything, attack shenanigans, unfortunately, with Misfortune. Until the attack token comes back on over to Humble. So if there is an Unspeakable Horror in hand, Shikka does live for a couple more turns.
I mean, this Decimate's only 4 damage. You have to block now with the Legion Grenadier to represent lethal. But I don't think that there's anything Shikkamarus is going to be able to do, especially given that I believe Jack the Winner is going to survive the turn, and that does mean we'll get another copy of Sleep with the Fishes.
Yeah, and here we go. Lunari Priest is going to come out. Going to get another Celestial. And, it's really disheartening that there's no Celestials that heal. And that's pretty much what Shikka needs right now. And, okay, Make It Rain even has the RNG victory here on the table if needed.
I mean, if the Celestials could heal, the last thing I want to see is my opponent star shaping into a Celestial that then heals them. Oh, speaking of no Celestials that heal, SJW, what about Golden Scepter?
Okay, all right. Technically, I'm thinking like burst speed, but yes.
Yeah, look at that healing Celestial. Oh, what's that, Shikka? Your Nexus died right next to your healing Celestial. Oh man.
Oh, and Humble Opinion. All right. I mean, has gone undefeated during the tournament so far, and tying
it up 1-1.
Tying it up here.
Okay, so we did see different bans. It is going to be the Shen Fiora now on the side of Humble Opinion, trying to take out this day and night deck. Ooh, we're getting down to the wire, SJW. This will be, I believe, our last match from the winner's side bracket. Yep. After this, we move down to players fighting for their lives. Of course, the loser of this will still have a chance at going through the loser's bracket to get that invite. And this is... We're not playing poker here, Humble Opinion. Wrong card game. You might want to get rid of that 2 pair.
Yeah. And good to see, though, Fiora Shen again. So actually seeing Fiora Shen pop up twice here. So this should be a pretty interesting matchup. And again, I got to say, this whole Kid Cudi deck, I'm not very impressed with whatsoever. I feel like it's very underwhelming so far this entire tournament. But
oh man, so many one-ofs in the deck of Humble Opinion. We got one Priz Barrier, one Relentless Pursuit, one Deny, one Bright Steel Formation. That's it. Those are all the ones.
So just a heads up too, just to give everybody a heads up, we have Sori and Colby M68 that are in the losers bracket semis. So that's going to be one of the games that it looks like that's going to be the next game we actually do, possibly. And then we have Reinu and Rogio are playing. The winner of that will play the winner of Kukin and the loser of this game. So still a little bit of ways to go here, but we will see 2 more matches after this game.
I believe this Night and Day deck has a pretty bad time into Shen Fiora. And one of the reasons for that is the only combat trick you actually have is Pale Cascade. You have Unspeakable Horror to pop barriers, but you also have Hush to pop barriers. Now, there's only one Hush, but Hush is, because it burst speed gets rid of barrier, it doesn't actually play around multiple barrier spells if you tap below, sort of the mana for a fleeting Hush. So it's not out of the question that we see like a Shen Fiora attack, and then I go, oh, let me Hush off that barrier, and then I respond with a Riposte, which is something we typically can't see, because barriers aren't getting popped at burst speed.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is correct. Barrier kind of finicky as far as that's concerned. Been one of the drawbacks since the game has released. So we do see Solari Priestess. See what Celestial eventually Shikka is taking here. And I got to say, Humble off to a pretty good start, too. Is going to curve nicely into Shen on turn 4. And also, the Dragon on turn 5 is going to feel real nice as well. So things are looking decent for Humble Opinion, but obviously we don't know what Shikka's got in hand, so we'll see what comes down on Shikka's attack turn on turn 4.
And like we said, a lot of weak units in Shikka's deck. This is sort of the fair Celestial deck where, Riot had said, oh, the Celestials are so strong for the cost because you still have to pay for the card that makes them. This is a deck where you really feel that payment price. Anytime you're playing a Celestial, it really does. Like a Traveler that comes down here definitely feels like a 7-mana Traveler. You're not scaling into the late game off of anything. It just feels a little bit too fair in my opinion. But because all these Celestial generators and even the Nightfall things like the Duskbringer and the Night Diana are so weak, you are very vulnerable to a Fiora win con.
Yeah, and not just that, right? I mean, we always mention Fiora win con in this Fiora Shen or any of the barrier decks, really. There's this whole thing where, like, there's this card called Bright Steel Formation that's just, like, really big and gives everything barrier. And when you have something like Green Glade Caretaker on the field, we have seen games won where Humble could just go wide and just overrun Shikka by, turn 9, essentially. You just drop a Bright Steel on turn 9 and just go face. That could be what Shikka goes for here as well, and it's looking like that's kind of what his hand is shaping up to be with there being no Fiora yet.
He does have the Screeching Dragon, though, so that is... It's not a Fiora, but it is something that can... after it kills 4 units, it's not going to win you the game, but it is going to be an 8-9, and a lot of times that's going to be good enough. And with so many weak units, that Dragon is going to maintain its high health total while doing it. Shikka doesn't miss his Allegiance, very critically. It feels really bad when you miss Allegiance only playing 3 of a card.
Yeah, it just feels bad to miss Allegiance, unfortunately. And we have seen everybody miss Allegiance today, especially Ghoster Driver. Ghoster Driver knows what it feels like to miss Allegiance.
He got it back, though. He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
He feels okay
he
about
top
that.
decked an Ace Soul for the win, and that's all we can ask for, right? So good things happening for him. So we'll see what Humble decides to go with here. The Screeching Dragon feels like a pretty good play, just curving so perfectly into turn 5. And Jesus, Shen plus Screeching Dragon, God, that just makes that card feel even better than it already has felt. And yeah, unfortunately going to be stunning out the Screeching Dragon, though, from Leona. So getting a pretty good use out of Leona from Shikka and her Daybreak effect. We'll see if Leona's able to level up decently early here. Looks like we're going to start to put some damage on her with the Fleet Feather, though.
Yeah, and going for a more aggressive route rather than kind of playing the control game and going, okay, I'll eat up your little Solari Priestess. I feel like Shikka, or Humble Opinion rather, is even a little inclined to keep those around as feel for a Fiora if he does eventually draw one. Not a lot of draw power in the deck, but I feel like the namesake champions of decks like this kind of tend to come to you when you need them most.
Yeah, I tend to agree. As we will see 3 damage, it looks like, push through from the Bright Steel Protector.
And that's going to be really relevant because, I mean, this Shen is almost certainly going to level up.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, the aggression really starts to come on. You put your foot on the gas, all of a sudden, this Spirit's Refuge is also a riposte. Every barrier just turns into a riposte.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. And barriers, oh man, I'm just so happy again to see barriers really presenting themselves in this tournament. Such a great deck and have been performing really well. And honestly, with Humble right now, it seems like he's kind of in the driver's seat with this game. You know, Shikka obviously very much still in this, has plenty of cards in hand. You know, is pretty much kept up in card advantage as far as that's concerned. But I don't know. It's really dangerous that Humble has this this good of a field established, because on the side of Shikka, what are you realistically gonna do about this field? I mean, you have to get a good Celestial card off of one of your Invoke cards to really deal with any of these.
Yeah, and if Humble wants to, he can actually level the Shen this turn, and it looks like he might do that with this Shen's Stand United. I know we talk a lot about how champion spell. There are a few champion spells that are not sort of mana efficient to save your champion, but since this one will actually level the Shen, I feel like it's kind of worth it. And the other thing is that even if your opponent does hush to pop your barrier or something like that, you're still only dealing 1 to the Shen with the Meteor Shower and 4 to this Fleet Feather Tracker.
Meteor Shower, man, I feel like that's a card a lot of people tend to go with. Seems like a really good choice in a lot of different spots, being able to do that 1 chip damage on top of the 4.
Very reminiscent of Swipe.
Wow, that's a throwback. Oh my god. Did you just bring me back to my Druid OTK days? Malagos Druid OTK. Whew. Wow.
Oh, okay, so actually going for this is a little bit risky to me. Hush here now would actually kill the Shen, and we'd be able to get another one down, but that one's so far away from the level up. This shiny Shen that I have right here, okay, it looks like Spirit's Refuge is going to be enough though, and the Brightsteel Protector will actually level that up.
Yeah.
And that's going to be big, especially with the Fleet Feather Tracker down. It means that we can throw the Shen barrier onto the Fleet Feather, and all of a sudden we have a 5-1 challenger and a 4-5 challenger, and Shikka, outside, actually literally nothing in his main deck survives a 5-1 challenger. Ravoon is the highest health unit. A leveled Leona is the only thing, and even then we could just throw a Screeching Dragon at it.
And this is exactly why I just don't like this Kid Cudi deck today and yesterday. Like, it just seems so underwhelming as far as what it can even do. I mean, we've talked a lot about what even is the win condition in this deck, and it usually, I feel like we always just keep saying Leona's Morning Light, and I feel like that just doesn't seem like it's enough.
Curious to see what he protects here, either Shen or Screeching Dragon, I would have to imagine. If you protect the Screeching Dragon, yes, you lose your Shen. You do have another Shen in hand. If you lose the Screeching Dragon, you lose a fair amount of your challengers. It's just Fleet Feather Tracker all of a sudden. But this is going to... Did that not level up?
No, it looks like we
Oh, that's right.
Shen
Shen has to see you play 4 barriers,
yeah.
And I was counting the Brightsteel Protector that had come down earlier.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay, so Shen's going to level next turn. I would imagine then we're opening with the Brightsteel Protector onto our Shen. That will level him, because I don't think Shen, much like a couple of other champions, Shen will not give a +3 boost to the barrier that levels him.
Wait, so the one directly to the right of the one he's supporting, you're saying, right?
No, the barrier effect that levels Shen will not get a +3 attack.
Oh, yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so you need to level Shen before you actually go for the Fleet Feather so that you do get that 5-1.
Yep, gotcha.
Plus, I mean, I like putting a barrier on the Shen anyway so that I can protect him. You know, he is my good boy, my friend, my savior in this matchup, as I don't have a Fiora just yet. So kind of pillaring on the Shen here. It's not the ideal win con, but it is something that we are prepared to play toward.
Yeah, and here we go. Here's that Shen level up that we were just talking about. And this is... So, I actually mentioned this earlier as well. We're talking about Fiora. This is a Fiora Shen deck. Everybody thinks, oh, Fiora. That's the Fiora win con. We're going to win with the Fiora. That's how this game closes out. But this is what this deck can also do. And this is why I think this barrier deck has been so damn good throughout this entire tournament. Just like, look at this field. It's so wide. It's going to get a lot of work done against Shikka's field right now. Shikka really has no response with this whole Kid Cudi deck. Just really not having the greatest suite of spells to combat something like this. And on top of that, Shen going to provide some nice buffs to a lot of these units. So we'll see if this is the swing turn that Humble needs to kind of get in this game and start to close it out.
Okay, this could be the situation that I was talking about earlier, where we are down to 5 mana, and we could have Hush to try and kill the Shen, but we have another barrier spell in hand. I don't think Humble passes here. I think it'd be pretty wild to not go in with at least something. I don't necessarily mind losing the Fleet Feather if we are going to put the barrier onto this Green Glade Caretaker, but like our opponent has so many small units, and while we were talking about how that's food for the Fiora, if there is no Fiora, that's a lot of chump blockers that we're going to have to kind of chew through. It's going to take a few turns to do that, and in the meantime, Shikka has been invoking. There are a few Celestials that could come out, and something like a Cosmic Rays would be backbreaking for Humble, who would be left with just the Shen and this Caretaker.
Okay, wait. Is this the real Bright Steel formation?
I mean, it might be, and Goblin in chat is calling out, Stand United onto this Green Glade Caretaker is probably just lethal. It'll get a big boost from the Shen and its own ability. I believe will go up to 15, so you just have to line that up onto the unblocked unit, but it looks like there is some kind of answer out of Humble for this one. Probably going to be that single copy of Hush.
Yeah, and actually, and that might do it. That's going to get Shikka out of this really sketchy situation right now. We'll see if the Hush does come down. And there is only a one of Hush. So that is the Hush that's going to be able to save his life right now. We'll see if Shikka has it. If he's lining up the block onto the... Okay. Well, this is smart because now you can always play the Hush.
Yeah, you probably don't want to proactively Hush. But yeah, Humble going for lethal. This is game number 3, right? All right. Is this going to do it?
Oh, man.
Shikka, do you have the Hush? That's literally the only card in your deck that gets you out of this.
Oh,
Humble
wow.
opinion. This... Has he outmaneuvered him? 17 damage coming at the face. Whoop. And I don't think he... Oh, Pale Cascade.
That's not it.
Could draw the Hush.
Does he draw it?
It would have to be snap fired off by Shikkamarus.
Oh,
I don't
oh my God! He top decks the Hush!
Off of the Pale Cascade.
Oh my...
Humble opinion. I mean, his board is going to suffer for this.
Holy crap. Oh my God. We just witnessed the top deck of top decks in this entire tournament. That was insane.
I mean, forget about Cosmic Rays. We just got rid of the entire board, and now Humble really doesn't play phenomenally on defense from here. And this Fleet Feather Tracker isn't actually going to have Challenger because there's no unit to play alongside it. And now Humble opinion, so close to getting it done, now seems so far away from winning this game.
Are you kidding me? Like, that has to feel so bad for Humble. If Humble doesn't make the invite now, that sucks. That's going to feel so bad to lose to that.
And now this is where things get even worse. This Fleet Feather Tracker pairs so poorly into this Ravoon play because if Humble wants to develop something in order to push through the the barrier onto this and then have the Shen attack with the Fleet Feather to pick off a unit, then Shikka gets to play something and stun the Green Glade Caretaker.
Hey, Boulevard.
He might just be going for something big this turn. What's up?
Hey, how about them cantrips?
If you had just played 34 cards. Actually, hold on. If you just played more Hush than one.
Wow. That was insane. That is probably, I don't know, Boulevard. Out of all, we've seen a lot of crazy games. And I wouldn't say this is necessarily the craziest game, but I would say that's the craziest individual top deck we've ever seen watching Runeterra at this point.
Okay, so this is actually really good for Humble. I think you have to take the kill onto the Ravoon here, or else this Leona is just going to start to run away with the game. Actually, probably even present lethal onto you next turn as they start to stun out units, because this Fleet Feather doesn't have Challenger yet. You can't go for an open attack to kill the Leona.
Wow, Shikka might take this away by the skin of his teeth, and oh man. I mean, yeah, you're going to get a good trade, so Humble at least be able to play this repost to get rid of this Ravoon here. Only going to take, it looks like, 5 damage. Going to hang on to that last little bit of hope in that Green Glade Caretaker. But I don't know if these 3 cards on field are going to be able to get it done here. We'll see. We'll see how much work maybe that this Shen with the Fleet Feather Tracker can do. Ooh. Oh, that's a card.
What is this game, SJW?
That's
the Pale Cascade into the Hush now. Judgment off the top for Humble.
Oh my God. Is this, if he goes in for an all-out attack and then if we actually get all these blocks lined up, we might have ourselves a game again, ladies and gentlemen.
I was wondering what he could possibly draw. in order to protect his Shen? And
This
the
is it.
answer was apparently
This
Judgment.
is it. Oh my god. This game is insane. All right. And this just straight up board
Oh,
clears.
okay. This actually scares me because what I was thinking was that this Stand United trick doesn't work twice, right? But Shikka actually is leaving an unblocked unit. If the
Okay.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought. If he blocks here, as bad as it seems, I understand it.
Yeah.
You were so incredibly close to losing the game to this play earlier.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you're gonna feel so insane
Well,
if you lose to it
all right,
twice.
so there's two judgment. So you play around judgment, I think, more than Shen because there's only one Shen left in deck. Is that right, or is there still two?
Yeah. There should still
There might be
be
two. Is this the
two.
same Shen that's
Yeah.
been on board? So
It
wow.
is because
Oh,
he had the two Shens in hand and used one as the Stand United.
okay. Gonna keep the judgment on the back burner for now. So okay, all right. I don't mind it. My humble. We'll see if this works out for him in the next couple of turns here. I will say, I mean, two of the cards in Shikka's hand are pretty much useless at this point.
Basically.
So it's not as much of a blowout as one would think looking at the field, but I don't know. Humble's gonna need something crazy to really put themselves back into this. I'm trying to think. I mean, Bright Steel Formation would do the trick. That's a card.
That is a card. I think let's talk about that Fiora win condition again.
Yeah, I think something like back-to-back draws of like Bright Steel and River Shaper would actually get Humble 100% back in this game. But if we don't,
Ooh, there is Ravoon again, and that is not what you wanted to see on the side of Humble Opinion. You don't have a lot of units, and now there is. I mean, we can string together multiple instances of stunning out your units, and I believe that one Daybreak unit and a Leona spell, that's lethal. Humble can only play one unit. That would be 3 stuns, and the buff onto it all would be the difference maker. But, I mean, this Mountain Scryer could also find something big here. If you find an Obliterate, you have to assume that just getting this 18-2 off the board is more or less going to be the game.
oh yeah, if this caretaker leaves the board, then that's gonna be it. That's gonna be all she wrote. And this the Spirit's Refuge doesn't really do too much here. Yeah, I mean, I'm really because now that this now opens up a really solid attack turn for Shikka. If I think it's just I think Shikka's gonna be able to take this one home. We haven't seen a Bright Steel drawn. We haven't seen anything like a River Shaper to try to start to generate some value. And yeah, like River Shaper into Judgment would have been like decent.
All right, there is stun number 1. I mean, if he has another unit, another Daybreak card, then this is just lethal for Shikka.
Yep.
Shikka, do you have it? What is in your hand? I see the dusts, but if you don't have another Daybreak unit, I mean, any unit really will get it done.
There it is.
And there it is. And that's going to be Shikkamarus.
Wow.
And it's just a concession out of Humble Opinion. 9-0 through Swiss
Wow.
and undefeated up until this last possible second, just outside of the winner's bracket, and to go down to a cantrip into a hush off the top. He played it so smartly, had that. Oh, that was insane.
Oh my god.
He has another chance. He still has a shot in the loser's bracket.
What did we just witness?
Shikamaru is going to be moving on to the Ascent of Targon Invitational. And if that is what it takes to climb Mount Targon, Shikka, you've got the grit.
What did we just witness? I have got to agree with you, Boulevard. That is absolutely insane. That top deck hush is crazy, and we knew it. It wasn't in hand. We saw the Pale Cascade come out, and just absolutely perfect top deck, perfect situation. And wow, all right, awesome to see, awesome stuff. This qualifier is not disappointing whatsoever.
So I want to give you an update on what's going on now. So the 4 players have qualified from the winner's bracket. It was Ghoster Driver, Shikamaru, Vig, and Shark Gui. Now moving down to the loser's bracket, we're about to get into Colby M68 versus Sorry. Winner of that will qualify. We just saw Humble Opinion lose. Humble Opinion will come down and play Kukin. Winner of that will play Ranu versus Rogio. Winner of that goes to the Invitational.
Yeah, so we have at least one more here that we're going to be doing. I'm hoping that we can get the perspective. If... Hold on one second.
Kind of figuring out where we're going to get the stream from,
No,
basically.
so it's going to be Twitch. I already have that set up.
Okay.
All right, so if Humble if Humble is able to win versus Kukin, and then just win versus Kukin, then we would be able to get Humble's perspective versus Reinu and Rodeo. I'm trying to think of who's actually streaming, whose perspective that we can get, but we are already set up for Sorry. It's actually Sorry, not Sorry. All right, let's get this right. We've gone over this, Boulevard, and
you've gone over this, and I've looked at you crazy every single time you said it that way.
I am crazy. Who we kidding? So we are gonna be seeing this game next in just a second. We're just getting everything set up real quick. And we should be able to load this up for everybody here and get into yet another fire game of these qualifiers. And again, whoever wins this particular game is going to go ahead and get their shot at the Invitational next week, where myself and Boulevard will also be there to bring you guys all the action. So, man, this has been a spicy day, Boulevard.
I'm still reeling from that. I can't believe... I mean... We've seen situations like that happen in card games. I've done things like that myself in card games, but whenever your opponent doesn't even have the answer in hand and says, I might as well draw a card and see if it's on top of my deck. Oh, look, it was actually there. It just feels so bad.
Well, hey, that's a perfect example of why you don't give up when you do have that one out in your deck. Because...
Okay, Yugi Moto.
It's... Never give up. There are no bad cards in my grandfather's deck. All right? Just get this straight.
Except for like 35 of them, and then the 5 pieces of Exodia.
Yeah, they're all normal monsters. And Dark Magician, which is still a normal monster. So, honestly. All right, so Shikkamarus taking the first spot for the Invitational next week. Humble Opinion still has a chance to get back in this. We actually do have all of the games for Humble Opinion in the losers bracket as well, so that will be up next. Make sure you subscribe, turn on the bell for when that video goes live, and as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.